Coming up on this episode of Free Lunch.
Everyone,
She
my
said,
mom,
as a
boricua, I have seen, people push through it and burn out. There is a time and season for everything under the sun. And if this is not your winning season, it is okay. My husband, is just going with the flow here. And I felt very convicted to really change the way I talk to him.
Well, in your personal life,
in my personal life,
you're getting boxed up.
I'm getting boxed up. The thing is so funny is that my husband hasn't been unleashed to the world yet. Really,
he hasn't been unleashed to the world. That sounds so scary. What? I just over the last couple of years have just gotten more comfortable with being just brutally transparent and honest with God about when I'm scared.
It's Free Lunch Season 3 with a special thanks to our sponsors, Bullseye-LLC.com, Ready, Aim, Bullseye, where safety is our ammo, Gen1LLC.info, Generation 1 Logistics, taking pride in putting our carriers first and helping owner-operators get premium loads, stay organized, and increase profit, and ScarletOakCandleCo.com, the self-care experts.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Freestyle Gospel, aka The Real Frii, with another episode of Free Lunch. And I finally got my girl Victoria in the building, y'all. Give it up for her. Thank you so much for sliding through.
Come to check your book.
Victoria's actually uniquely debonair, decked out. She got the flashy date night gear on tonight. So
I got my Emily in Paris.
Look, for all us married folk out there, we know the importance of a date night. So she's been so kind to squeeze little old Frii in there just before that. So all the more, I'm so grateful for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So before we get going, let the people know, who you are, what you do, all that good stuff.
All right. So my name is Victoria Rosa Garcia. As I was telling you at work, they call me the NOTORIOUS V.R.G. And so that happens to be my brand right now, and I'm running with that.
The Notorious V. I love that.
It's hysterical. And, we just need the Biggie music in the background.
That's it. The Notorious V.R.G.
And so I am a digital marketer by day. I work in pharma. So I'm a pharma marketer. And by night, I wrote a women's Bible study. So it's called Purity and Peace. And I launched it back in 2016 when we first met in Cornerstone.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have to go back and find that now.
Yeah. And so a lot of people know me, especially in Connecticut, in the area, of being the leader and author of Purity and Peace, where we are committed to creating safe spaces for women to heal from traumatic past events and, being able to have a safe space for women to talk through whatever it is that happened to them in life that they need healing from. I think we're in a culture right now in the church where people are kind of, I call it like herd mentality. Mm-hmm. You're being herded into one service and then, gotta leave because the next service is coming in and you're herding in. And, I grew up in a time when we could kind of chat after church. Like I need to be able to hug you and smell your perfume and compliment you on your look. And so,
wow, I never thought of that.
Yeah, it drives me crazy.
You kind of lose that.
Yeah, it drives me nuts. So I am very proud to say that for the past 6 years, we have had small group Bible studies in Connecticut. And when we had COVID, we shifted and pivoted to put them online through Zoom. So we've been able to have women from all over the U.S. tune into Purity and Peace. And this next year, I'm actually going on sabbatical. I'm taking a year of Jubilee and resting from all ministry to really focus on some other things that God has for me in this season. So I think you found me we've been friends for a while. We've done ministry together, but recently I've really picked up kind of my digital marketing tips and tricks on TikTok and just trying to
she's killing it on TikTok, by the way.
Test and learn that and see how that content is going. And it's been really cool. You're one of two podcast invites that I actually got from doing some of that content. And that's a little bit about me. I love marketing. I love really giving a voice and an identity to a brand, and finding target markets and things like that, and being able to directly sell that in a way that is relational to target markets for things that people need, right?
Absolutely.
We're out here being entrepreneurs, and we're out here in businesses solving problems, and this is a way to help people find the solution to their problems. And I love being the link to that. That really gets me excited. So
how long have you been into the marketing whole space?
That's really, really good question. So I pivoted to marketing because I was originally in journalism and communications.
In the same industry, like pharma?
No, I was doing it for a newspaper. I actually did my internship at the Connecticut Post in Bridgeport.
Okay.
And loved all things newspapers, really was obsessed with New York Times and everything like that. But when I was graduating from college as a millennial, so all my millennials out there, if you know, I graduated from UConn in 2006, and people were getting laid off from newspapers. There was a whole digital revolution that was taking place, and all of the newspapers were going online, and they were giving out the content for free, not realizing that it was putting them out of business, because people were like, why am I going to buy a newspaper if I can get the content for free online? Yeah. So that's when, a lot of people had to do a lot of layoffs, and they had to pivot. So I couldn't really find a job in that space for a while, even though I did my internship in that. And so I went into originally a political role where I was working for a member of Congress for a time. My minor in college was political science. So I did that for a time. Was a missionary for a little bit. So I went to India, Thailand, Dominican Republic for a year in 2008, I should say. And then found myself going into sales and marketing right after that, and just loving, taking my storytelling ability and using it to sell a brand. Yeah. And where I landed was in health systems in Florida Hospital in Florida, and got my feet wet with a lot of campaigns and learning how to get into marketing. And at that time, blogs were big, and social media was just coming up in 2009 and 2010, and worked my way up, came back to Connecticut. So I worked in Florida for a while, came back to Connecticut, and was a copy editor at a newspaper for a while, and then moved into higher education for marketing, and got my master's in digital marketing in 2020. And that's just a little bit, about
I've been
me.
thinking about that, going back to school to get a master's, but I despise school so much. Well, traditional school. I love educating myself. I love education, objectively speaking. Right. I'll spend countless hours on YouTube and what they call it, YouTube University, teaching myself.
I think there's a lynda.com.
So I love learning. Yeah. I just don't like school. Does that sound weird? Is that, I love learning, but don't like school.
Yeah, because it's pressured, right? When you get that pressure to learn, and it's also being delegated. What you're learning is being delegated by someone else, as opposed to you kind of navigating through what you want to learn. That lack of freedom.
Yeah.
The lack of freedom.
Because even when you have probably the most part, when you have an identified degree, let's say you're going for, whether it's your bachelor's or a graduate degree, we all know you have to learn a bunch of stuff that you're not even interested in that field. Right. Somebody who, gets my bachelor's degree, and I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a minor in child development. And the majority of the classes for criminal justice that I had to take, it was boring to me. I didn't care about that stuff. It was at the crossroads of where criminal justice meets, children or juveniles or whatever, is what the things that really piqued my interest.
Love that.
Right. So it's I had to still bite down, bear all this other information that, for what I wanted, to use it for, wouldn't have.
In my experience, that's more so in a bachelor's once you get into the master's degree,
Yeah.
it's a bit more focused, and at least in my experience and what I did with digital marketing, it was more focused and accelerated, and you were able to have a lot of options from the topic. For digital marketing, there was everything from pricing to big data analytics to going
Good old
social
analytics.
media. Yeah, social media.
Boring stuff.
Right. I actually like it.
I like it. I like it too. I hate that I have to do that as well as everything else.
Yes.
But
Yes,
because I really started as a mathematics major.
Oh.
So I love numbers. I was
Okay.
gonna be a cryptologist that was my original plan. So I went to as a high school student, I went to Howard University's actuarial science program, whole thing.
that's
So I
amazing.
love numbers.
Yeah.
But it's just it takes away from all the cool creative things that I want to do when it's time for me to crunch numbers and put things together.
Let me encourage you with a little testimony. I feel that so strong, and I feel you're a millennial.
Yeah.
So
we're amongst the oldest millennials.
Right. Me too. Yeah.
Hold on.
1985 right here. So really trying to find purpose. I think what's hard too is here I am saying, oh, I went to see a master's or get a master's degree. So, and you're like, man, I'm really thinking about whether I should go back to school or not. Right. And I think that our generation, I feel like we felt kind of bamboozled by school because we're like, just go to school. And
we were definitely bamboozled.
Right? And, no one talked to us about the debt, the crazy amount of debt that we were going to get, and the fact that we were going to graduate in the middle of a recession and not get a job and maybe be working in retail and working our way up and all of those things. But I will say I got my degree in 2006, and in 2010, everyone my age was going back to school for their master's. Everyone. And I applied to go to the University of Central Florida for teaching. Studied for the GRE, did all of those things, applied to UCF. I'm trying not to say UFC because we're big UFC fans, and I always mess that up. So University of Central Florida, and they denied me. So I have the email and everything. I had put this up. They're like, sorry, you didn't make it in. And I'm like, oh man, I'm a graduate school reject right now in 2010. All of that to say, I moved, I kind of shared my experience of where I was went from Florida back to Connecticut, went into newspapers, and then I started working for Sacred Heart University, and lo and behold, Sacred Heart University, it pays for your master's degree when you work for them. So you just have to work a year
before you can get that benefit.
You can get the 100% benefit where they're paying for the entire degree. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. So here I am at the end in 2020, graduating and reflecting back and saying, man, had I gotten that degree in 2010, I would have had to pay for it out of pocket. Rejection is protection, right? And so, and I would have been in a lane, and my parents are educators, so they were school teachers in Bridgeport. My father was the first Puerto Rican principal in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Wow.
Okay? This is way back. So education was a huge theme in our family.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, maybe I'm called to be a teacher, right? Because this is what's down the line. And I got rejected from that. And I was like, in 2010, I was feeling so terrible. But, 10 years later, I'm getting this amazing degree from the Jack Welch College of Business and Technology from Sacred Heart for free. And all these doors started opening for me in my passion. And I'm still a storyteller, like I wanted to be as a journalist. I'm still able to use all of these facets of my strengths in a different way. And I'm working at my first corporate job right now, and getting my sea legs in that regard. But it's such an amazing feeling to be on this side of the story, to say, thank God I was not a teacher during COVID. Because my friends,
that's what I had to contend with.
Yeah, my friends who were, and I look back at, my parents would come home and say all the stories about just being a teacher. And anything you go to, there's going to be obstacles, right? It's going to be hard. Nothing in life is easy. But I just know me and myself, and I know what I can handle and what I can't handle. And I think me being a teacher during COVID, I don't think I would have been able to handle that personally. And God bless all the people who did it and who were able to do it. But I was like, wow, God, now I can really understand why that path wasn't for me years later.
Ultimately, I had to throw in the towel. But yeah, like that. And the most difficult part was like trying to, be committed to your, students. While also trying to, so you're trying to, do Zoom sessions with them, and then also trying to like tend to your own kids schooling in the other room and making sure they, don't fall behind. So like once the next school year came, I just was like, I'm not gonna be able to sign up for this in another year. Like, I had to, had to make that tough, very tough decision, but it's what ultimately got me here, Exactly. So who knows, right? Like if the pandemic never happened, I'd probably still be at the school.
There's value in both. I guess we're saying now, right? We're saying there's value in the rejection, that here's the protection from even going through it. And there's value in going through it and having to resign. And take a pivot. Like we all, I think that was
got to master the pivot.
The pandemic pivot. That's what we call it.
Yeah.
You got us good at, like,
I think the pivot, like, as a thing itself is where we find it difficult to pivot in life. I think happens more than not as a result of having our heart and mind set on a very specific way that something has to happen, like to get from point A to point B.
Expectations.
So yeah, I'm in my mind, I have a plan. The way my life's gonna roll, I'm gonna go to school, go to college, get my degree, then I'm gonna get a job in this, nail it, and live happily ever after. That's how it's gonna go. And it's not that God doesn't want that end result for us. It's just that it's not always our plan to from point A to B.
Exactly.
Right. And so anytime where we hit that crossroad, like I said, or that point where, that juncture where it requires a pivot, it's like that little kid like throwing a tantrum inside of us sometimes. It's like, oh, but it's supposed to work like this, And It's like, wow, like I would have never thought that I'd be here. Like literally, like it's been spoken about and alluded to on the show numerous times, but literally this physical space that we're in was never meant to be this.
Wow.
Like even the color of the wall still are the color of the wall. It's always a reminder about what it was supposed to be.
Right.
And it's, the colors of our, the candle business me and the wife was doing. Right. So this very room was designed to be my wood shop to do the candelabras that I did out of wood. So it was to be my place to like carve and sand and like make a mess.
Right.
Because the wife could, do the candles at home.
Right.
That's not, not really a big mess. And I was at home trying to like do all this sanding and carving and sawing and it was just becoming too big of a mess. And she's like, you gotta take this out of here. You got to do something.
Right.
And so it was making a good enough amount of money to justify like, let's look for a small space to like rent. This was that space.
Wow.
And the minute, literally the last day I put the last coat of paint on, and this was an empty room. I had like the windows sealed. I had like a divider to catch the sawdust, all that. I went to the elevator, and that's when I felt the lump in my armpit and found out I had the blood clot. My wife tells me like at the elevator, you need to go to the emergency room, get that checked out. I didn't have any pain, whatever. I find out I have this blood clot moving like, through my shoulder, going towards my lung.
Ribs.
Yeah, I had 4, surgeries after that. And then to find out that it's repetitive motion, mind you, it's my dominant hand. It's that. So like any of the repetitive motion is what, the vascular surgeon is telling me is going to exacerbate it and like causes my arm to tighten.
And here you are making all these candles. You're a little candle maker over here.
And like, it really was just like, I could, the candles like making stuff like that wasn't going to exacerbate it. But I'm like, I can't be sanding and like doing this. Like even to this day, when I like just brush my teeth, that repetitive motion.
Wow.
My arm tightens up. So it's like, I've signed this lease though. Like, God, I got to find a way to pay this rent now. Like, We have a whole building that was designed for this.
Pivot? How did you get from candles to...
It was a, sometimes the pivot isn't always even to something different or unknown. Sometimes it's a pivot to something that you've simply left behind
or been avoiding.
Right? So it's like my wife's like, you've been using your voice for years. Like I've traveled all over the world tour using my voice, doing spoken word, like being a speaker, doing writing workshops, like, and so I'm like, this is what this space has to be. I have to use my voice, because now I've had even my physical body limited. Wow. So all there really is left is my voice.
Right.
Right. So it's like almost like the pivot, being God's way of like turning me back to what.
And you never
I always should have been,
is protecting you from in the midst of all that too. Like you could never know. Because for me, I know during that season where I wasn't in school, wasn't doing anything, and sitting there and watching everyone else progress, everyone else was graduating and everyone else was moving on with their life. I got my job at Florida Hospital, and I went into a deep depression that season where that job was graced and gave me the grace to take time off, to see a therapist, to start my healing journey, and not fire me. And if I'm
not
at school, if I'm at school and taking all that time off with my kids, right, needing a long-term sub or whatever it may be, looking back, like hindsight is 2020. But I just want to encourage anybody who's listening today who has gotten that rejection or needs to pivot, or, these are the moments that really push us into the destiny, into the real place that you're supposed to be, and protecting you from where you're not supposed to be. And it sounds inspirational. It sounds great. I can make it sound wonderful. But when you're going through it,
it's difficult. It's very difficult.
It's embarrassing. People are like, hey, how's that? How's UCF going? And I'm like, I got rejected. I didn't get accepted. Not accepted. I am a reject right now. And
it's tough.
It's not tough. A good feeling when you're going through that. But it's a good feeling on this side of it, looking back to say, wow, look at all the things I avoided from that rejection. And
I think a good rule of thumb to keep, granted, it's difficult, right? It's one of those things that fall under, it's better said, than done. But kind of a thing to help for those listening, like when you are in the midst of it, what's helped me in the midst of it, all those moments, is reflecting on the past pivots of life, or the past, whether you want to call it rejections or denials or delays of life, where I've witnessed the other side of those already. And it reminds me that no matter how crazy or hopeless the next situation seems, if I look behind me, I can count numerous of times where God gets me onto the other side. He's like, he's 10 for 10.
Yeah.
Like, and for me, this may not work for everybody, but I use logic in my self-talk to show myself when my worry is unfounded.
That's such a good point, is a self-talk.
Yeah, so when I'm talking to myself,
is
I'm
toxic in there.
I'm like, really, Chris? Like, if you think about it, do you have a legitimate leg to stand on, a reason to not believe, no matter how scary the situation looks? Granted, give yourself that. It does look horrible. But do you have any other moment that has looked horrible and look back where God has not brought you through it? And if the answer, and this is like literally, this is how my self-talk goes. If the answer is no, Chris, then even this fear, this situation, no matter how scary this time looks, it's just the players are still the same. It's you, bro, facing this thing and trying to trust God. Those are the players, you and God. And every time, every other past scenario, the outcome is always the same. The only thing is that the playing field changes.
Right.
the new field. We go from playing, maybe we're playing at home today. Next week we're playing an away game. Just the playing field changes, but every single time you walk off the field with the W, bro.
Every time.
Hopefully that helps somebody listening.
Yeah,
going through
absolutely.
the pivot. Somebody's going through the pivot.
Somebody is going
like
through the pivot.
Heck right now.
And they needed to hear that. And, it's easier, like you said, easier said than done. I'm actually going through another pivot right now because now I'm going through a sabbatical and I'm super type A, super starting. I'm a serial entrepreneur. So, and I love helping entrepreneurs and brands and from a grassroots level. Yeah. And so I got this word this year and talking to some of my friends and really fleshing out, I started feeling really tired and aggy against my ministry, right? And what I was doing, like people are reaching out to me for help and I'm like, and I'm like, wait a second, what's this feeling of like unsettling, of feeling like very aggravated at people? I'm like, and I'm looking it up and all the signs of burnout are there. Frustrated, foggy brain, not able to keep up. I am an incredible multitasker and I'm not able. I'm like, Lord, I can't keep up in the capacity that I once did. Like, what's going on with me? Is it my age? Is it this? Is it that?
Is it my age?
You have like, am I getting old? Like 40s creeping up on me, Oh, yeah. And so I really had to sit in the presence and just really meditate on what it is that God has for me in this upcoming season. And I identified with burnout so greatly. And I think hustle culture and what we've been fed, especially coming from the inner city, right? And like, this expectation of side hustles and doing this and doing that. And I have so many side hustles, like all this stuff that we're doing, plus the ministry and church and doing this and doing that. And in the midst of all of that, not really taking care of mental health and certain things that I should have been taking better care of, or even just, hey, there's wear and tear. Yeah. In anything, the tires on your car, your house, there is wear and tear. That's a level of normal, even at a normal rate. Yes. And so I had to come to terms with like, wow, maybe I need to step back from the 500 things that I'm doing and really reprioritize and focus. And one of those focuses for this new year is my family and my husband. We are still trying to have a family and, there's some complications going on with that and really trying to figure out what that looks like. And I've been on a certain diet for all of this and really focusing my energy to other things and being okay with putting down other things. Like there's tools, I'm also a singer. I wanted to be a worship leader. That's like one of my dreams in life. And when I saw that, my gifting, especially in the church, was teaching, and that's where God was moving even more so than say my praise and worship ministry. I put down the worship ministry to focus on purity and peace, and it really blew up. Right. And I think this is another one of those times to pivot and discerning like what is happening in the season. What is the season and the times telling you, right? Winter tells us hibernation, right? Yeah. Winter tells us to come in, to come within and to shut down and wear extra layers. And so the season is telling me it's time for me to reprioritize and to take on this sabbatical from this ministry aspect of things and focus more on my family and also my career in a different way. So I've been networking locally with other digital marketers. I joined the American Marketing Association, just pivoting a little bit and understanding that this year is really to rest and not have to do the most, right? Like as the youngins saying, you're doing the most. And I think that for those of us who've been so conditioned in hustle culture and side hustles and this and that, and we watch, entrepreneurs on, social media that are encouraging us to do all the things and really pulling back from that and prioritizing. Do you think that's like inherently negative? Do you think there's a time for the hustle culture? I think so. I think there definitely is a time to be all in.
Like grind mode.
Grind mode. There's been times when I'm like, listen, I can't give up right now. I have a degree to finish. I'm working full time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to save for a house, right? Like there's all these things. And I'm like,
wow.
I cannot just like not do anything and throw my hands in the air. It's like that meme where it's like, oh, forget this. And it's like they're throwing all the papers in there. And it's like, just kidding. I need all that stuff. Just kidding.
Exactly.
But I think that God graces us with seasons. Seasons change. And in that season, we have to be discerning to when he's telling us to pivot and do something different. And sometimes that means that it looks like being still and knowing, right? Being still and letting him fight a battle for us, because I struggled with that. I was like, Lord, I'm going to stop, influencing. I'm going to stop being on social media so much in my ministry. I'm going to lose influence. I'm going to lose momentum. I'm going to lose this. And the Lord was like, Vicky, watch how much more I can do through you in your rest.
That's a major trust play right there.
And I'm like,
that's what it is, man.
I'm like, oh man,
that's scary.
It's
being
scary.
in that spot.
Yeah.
And I think I had a conversation recently with my wife. We were pillow talking the other night, and I said, I just over the last couple of years have just gotten more comfortable with being just brutally transparent and honest with God about when I'm scared. Because I think, like, I grew up in, apostolic church, like really,
I grew up Pentecostal.
Awesome, you know what I mean? And a lot of the elders in that space, had it to where I felt as an adult, I carried on this like idea that, if I'm scared or if I feel those feelings, they're sinful, or it makes me a bad person or a bad Christian or something, right? And then I started to really I felt like, God really drew my attention to, the scripture of describing this being hot or cold and not lukewarm, right? And because God knows the truth, right? I know when you're scared and when you're not. So him knowing that if I'm scared, but I'm coming to him every day, whether it's in my supplication, my prayer, or whatever, as a facade or pretending I'm not, essentially I've now become lukewarm. Like I'm truly something else, but I'm presenting another way. Right. And I'm just feeling, hearing God say, you can bring that to me. Yeah. When you're afraid, confess that thing, give it to me. Because with that confession, I can do something with that. I can change that. But I cannot do that which you are coming to me in denial of in the first place.
Yeah, it's not honest.
It's not. And so I was like, I just get comfortable with normalizing God, I'm afraid right now. This is scary.
Scary.
You know what I mean? I am really, really afraid. I'm paranoid. I'm anxious. I don't know what this looks like, and I know I don't want to stay there in that space. Right? I know that. That's not, a facade. That's not a lie.
Yeah.
But I can't help this right now. And I need your help to remove this block.
And God can handle that.
He can meet you right there.
He can handle our anger. He can handle our anxiety. He can handle all that.
Fish shaking.
The fish shaking.
You got the fish shaking up at the sky.
The screaming. Look to the heavens. You're ripping your
very
clothes off.
Real.
Yeah,
very, very real.
It really is.
But on the sabbatical, right? You talk about this. Has it already begun? Or you said it's for 2023?
Yeah.
Come in?
So it's starting.
So how long is it going to be?
For the year.
Oh, for the whole year, 2023.
Whole year.
Have you done a full year sabbatical before?
Never.
In times past?
Never.
But you've done shorter ones before?
Ish. I saw my pastor. I saw my pastor go on a sabbatical this last year, and I saw how great it was for him, and how it replenished him, and how he got really close to his family, and I was like, wow, that's really inspiring, because you usually hear, leaders going on sabbaticals or going away because of a scandal. Let's be honest.
Yes.
Scandal, we're trying to swipe it under the rug, right?
This is true.
Instead of periodically, like it's a part of
working it in to the
sustaining,
plan.
right?
Yeah.
Like rest, don't quit.
Yeah.
Rest, don't quit. A lot of us are quitting and waiting.
That's how I like talk
burnout.
about like when people talk about fasting, right? Like it's become like almost like a traditional thing, or hey, we automatically just do it this time of year rather than making it a lifestyle. Like right? Like it doesn't have to be the time of fasting for me to decide that
that religious spirit of like going through the motions, and it has to be, January is when we fast the first fruits and all of that. Absolutely. And so,
So you saw it was awesome for him.
Yeah. And then I started seeing the annoyances that I was feeling about things that used to bring me life. So it's like, wow, in this season, these things used to bring me life. And in this season that I'm in now, it's annoying me. And this is a sign of burnout. And what do you do when you're burnt out? Because let me tell you, as a Puerto Rican woman, I've seen everyone, my mom, as a Boricua, I have seen, people push through it and burn out and turn into bitterness, and people lash out and become, and I've even done it like in the past, where I've destroyed relationships because I haven't been in the right headspace. And when you look back on it, it's like, man, I was going through a lot and I just needed to communicate with everyone. Like it was a lot and I need a timeout. I just need a timeout right now. Like I'm going to put myself in timeout.
Yeah.
I need to go to see a therapist because I need to work through some stuff that's not right in my brain and my heart right now. And I'm not understanding why. Yeah. So let me figure that out before I blow up and take it, because we take these things out on the people we love the most.
Before I take y'all out with me.
Right? Like, we're just going to drop kick everybody around here.
That's it. And that's it. Hurt people.
Yeah. And then we turn around and we're like, I probably shouldn't have reacted. I think I overreacted.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
And so before, I'm trying to like that preventive care, which is like us going to the gym, right? To avoid being
preemptive care.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, maybe these are some signs that I'm not in a good space, heart space, mental space, and it's okay for me to take a step back and really do things a little bit different this year and focus on some other things. I think God has called me to do some other things, like write a book, and I want to write a musical. And like I love art. I was a thespian growing up, and there's these other things that I want to do, but I'm like, I don't have to do time to do all of this because I'm running around. I think a lot of it is going within and finding that quiet space, taking retreats, like writing retreats, and like doing those types of things this year that are nurturing a different gift in me, as opposed to kind of being front and center on stage, because I preach at my church too. I do giving talks. I do all those types of things. And that takes a lot from you. Like it takes a lot of time to prepare for those talks. And another thing that I haven't mentioned as well was that I went into the beauty space. And so I got, I'm doing like microblading brows right now. I have like Viva La Beauty. Really because...
Love the name, by the way.
Thank you so much. Really what it was is because I did some market research, and one of our good friends in town, Luvina Leslie, has a curly hair salon. And so I wanted to go somewhere else. At that time, I was feeling so pushed to like move. Yeah, everyone was moving in 2020. So I'm like, everyone's doing it. I want to do it. I looked at a place I want to go. I'm like, there's no curly hair salons there. So let me get into it. And I have curly hair. All this to say, I went into the beauty space because I really also wanted to use my digital marketing skills in the beauty space to help artists. Because I realized that artists, a lot of them are just very free spirited and they're not necessarily like business minded.
Calculated. Right? Yeah.
And so wanting to help in that space. So that was another thing that I was like stirring up in the midst of all of it, right? And so really calming down and saying, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on Viva La Beauty and focus on giving tips and tricks about digital marketing, which is what I'm good at, and actually do digital marketing and model it for others. And be a great digital marketer by day in my day job, and focus on my family. Like I'm focusing on this niche that the Lord has given me, and want to be able to do some other personal things on the side without having to run Bible studies and train leaders and show up to church and do all this performing that is required when you're doing those things. So that's how it's going to look different for me It's just.
Now, do you
doing
think
less.
it's like, sabbatical, maybe to that extent, or
Exactly.
to go a whole year? Well, let me actually say this. Is it to be understood that, like, so does your sabbatical, are you saying includes, all things like online, social media that you just explained that you have been doing, that stuff, or
So
just a sabbatical away from ministry
from
stuff?
just ministry stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, from just
So-
ministry stuff, which has an online component to it. Because
Correct.
to explain, since our ministry did develop online and we have an Instagram page and things like that, I would put up like preachings and teachings on
Yeah.
my stories and have like therapy sessions with women in my DMs, right? Or people who like were going through hard times would reach out to us as a ministry and say, hey, can we have a food train made for this or that? And like you do those things, but those things take time, right? And it also was like my personal social media page was turning into a come to Jesus moment in my DMs, right? Which is fine for that season. That's what it needed to be. That's the vessel and who I was in that moment. But I also realized by doing all of that and becoming that persona and not having certain boundaries, it was taking a lot from me. And so I think there's a lot more boundaries to that space. And also what I've learned is really pivoting, right, and redirecting, I should say, people to other opportunities or other resources that they could be tapping into for those things that we were doing in our ministry just for the year.
And I think do you ever, well, I'll say this. I know for sure from just talking to other people and just seeing on, whether it's social media or other, sources, there's a lot of times the sabbatical from ministry, the resistance that comes to some people who wish to do that,
right?
Or backlash, you can even say.
Yeah.
I think comes from others not really seeing that time away to pour into yourself or otherwise whatever else God has for you actually benefits them. Like
Absolutely.
it only, now I think the issue becomes, and I think this is the case for many, small to medium-sized ministries all over the world, primarily the U.S., is that there are not enough workers in ministry.
I was going to say that 80-20
And
rule, 80-20.
So when you have that really excellent group of like workers, that small little niche or crew, they get spread real thin. Like it's like, hey, we need you because there's really no one else. And that's not for those of us who are the, whether you're a ministry or church member, for lack of a better way to say it, I mean, somebody could say it another way, but that's not our problem. That's, you know what I mean? Obviously it becomes a concern we have just because of the love of God that's in us, and we care about God's, people. We care about our brothers and sisters, those of us who are people of integrity and we have, real jobs. We want to be able to show up and do what people are expecting us to do. And
100%.
All that's there. And it really just becomes one of those unfortunate things when you kind of feel like you're it. And even when you might feel or hear God calling you to say, hey, you need to take a minute. We can find ourselves even arguing with God over
100%.
like if I don't, then who else, God, and forgetting that it's his church. It's his, if he's telling you that
they don't belong to me.
I assure you, he's got worked in a way that it's gonna be taken care of without you. Like you can take a minute.
You're hitting all
with
the things.
me,
So let me just continue this. You're hitting like, it's like the spirit, it's just one right now, right? So number one, 100% going, mulling on this with the Lord. I'm like, who's gonna do this? If I don't do it, then who? It's Elijah. Like,
all
Lord,
day.
I'm the only one, right? I'm the only one out here. And he's like, I got all these other prophets out, like Don't get it twisted.
Rocks included,
right?
mind you.
Right. Don't get it twisted.
After rocks cry out.
And number 2, something that I realized was that, and I saw this in my church growing up, because my cousin, who was the music minister at our church for many years, decided to move to Florida. And everyone was like, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it? And lo and behold, when he left, all these musicians rose out of the ashes.
Out of nowhere.
Young kids started picking
all dormant.
Started picking up. And really, when you look back on it, he was in their way. Because so long as he was there in that position, people were so complacent and comfortable to sit down and not use their gift and bury their talent. And so God's telling a lot of us to move. And this is where I was saying too, is like, if you've been sitting down for the past 7 years while I've been working, I will gladly pass the baton to you. Like, it's time to work, baby. It's time to work. It's time to work, you. Especially those of us who were laboring during the pandemic. Yeah.
I think that was the tough part for my wife and I, like at our church, we, we were faithful over there on Meadow Street, like so faithful to the point where it would literally be months and months on end, like 6 months, sometimes 7 months, and we'd never see Wheelers.
Wow.
Like, and there were like new families joining,
right?
Month of them, like, and then
Wheelers, just to give them context, is
2 different
other
campuses, the main campus,
the main campus.
Yeah, so like, and Meadow Street was our youth campus. So when we would make it to Wheelers on like a Sunday,
you were like, haven't seen you in a while.
Not even that, but just like we were meeting or being introduced to families or people as if like they were taking us as if we were new.
Right.
Because they hadn't seen us. And we're like,
we've been
no,
here
you're
for
new. Like
20 years now.
It was just, because it was really thin over there, with the youth. And then the pandemic came. And so we took on, these weekly virtual, things that, we're going to do this. Yeah. And then on top of the weekly,
and
just for the Wednesday.
To happen, right? We did it.
Had to happen. And so now we have the Wednesday, thing going. And then, adding on to that on the Wednesdays, I, didn't want it to, feed our youth because they weren't making it to any type of, Sunday. So they weren't getting edified on the Sunday. Right. So it's like, you know what? We'll have another thing on social media and like we'll put out, another video, a small little like devotional clips. And like we were doing these things.
And you're just working
and
your
it was
little
just
way.
Like, and mind you, this is meanwhile while all the other things in our world are still turning and happening, like the shifts with my job, the shift with the kids' schedule, the family members getting sick, and all this, and it was that burnout. So now we finally get welcomed back to in person, and I remember how difficult that talk was.
It's
that conversation,
on every level too, because I'm in corporate right now. And even in the corporate setting, and I went to the AMA networking event, and I was talking to them. Every space, it's not just. I just want to encourage people. Like it's not just the church. It's school. It's work. It's everyone is still trying to navigate the new normal. And I think we didn't process totally what actually just happened. I think.
Well, I think the thing that was really difficult for me was it was difficult to have the conversation with the leadership that me and my wife need to take a step back. Because we just like you said, like we cared about the work we're doing with these young people so much, like, you know what I mean? Like I think anybody who you can see for any prolonged period of time that does something for free, like clearly they have a passion or love for it, right? Like
absolutely.
So it was hard because of that, right? Because we just love these kids. But then too, it was hard because when we looked up or look around, it's like, but if we don't, who's gonna be there, right? And so it's like we were taking on this kind of vicarious burden that would otherwise be for leadership to figure out, right? We were taking on that. internally. And so it was like beating around the bush. I remember talking to my wife numerous times first.
Right.
And like, you know what? I'm gonna talk to Pastor so-and-so. I'm gonna tell him that, or all right, I'm gonna tell him next week. I'm gonna,
Right.
and it just was like,
you dread it.
I so dreaded it.
You dread it.
So dreaded it, man.
Because you're so good at it too, and and it brings you life. Like it does bring you life, but it also, if you do it, and I also think that, COVID, we have to consider what was going on in the midst of all of that outside of in our personal lives and everything too. Yeah. And I think that a lot of folks need to take a step down. And I think there's plenty of folks, I am convinced, and I'm glad we're talking about this so that whoever's here listening to this, that is part of that 80% that's been sitting for a while, take notice that things are shifting and changing and embrace it, because people don't like change. They're like, wait a second, we're not going to have purity and peace sessions next year. We're not going to have a leaders retreat. We're not going to, because we've been so consistent for the past 6 years that this is what now they're looking forward to. You've created a culture. You've created expectations. You've created just what people look forward to. And they're like, wait a second, we're not having small group Bible study, but that was my accountability group. But that was my anchor.
Yeah.
But you guys were this and you guys were that. And I really had to understand with my spiritual mother to say that, again, these people don't belong to me. They belong to God. Number two is I am 100% sure that people can now feel empowered to step up. And I'm sure God's been calling people to do women's ministry or Bible studies and all this stuff. But they're like, oh, Vicky's leading it.
Vicky's got it.
She's
all set.
She's good. She's good. And I'm over here like trying not to drop kick the brethren. You know what I'm saying? So I think
good stuff,
it really takes a lot of self-awareness and having that quiet time with the Lord and letting the Holy Spirit check you and be like, listen, this is not healthy. You're in an unhealthy place and space. And I'm thankful that my pastor modeled a sabbatical for me. And I think like he said something. He was like, now that I took a sabbatical, everybody wants to take a sabbatical. And I'm like, listen, Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ, right? So when you're a leader, and I expect too, like me as a leader, and I'm a micro influencer, right? I have this micro following, but even with that comes responsibility. And even with that comes the influence. And I think people are going to see this and just be like, man, that's what it is. I'm burnt out. Like, let me take this burnout test real quick. And then other people are going to say, you know what? I have been sitting on this singing gift for the past 7 years and have felt called to the choir or to this or to that, or to teach or to do children's ministries or to start a ministry. You know, there's probably a need in your church. Maybe you need a cooking ministry in your church or, something.
And I love that you mentioned earlier, like that, the whole, like, this applying to the corporate world as well, right? Because there, we have a widespread, platform where, our listeners are of all different walks, some, are Christians, some are Muslims, some are atheists.
Right.
The idea of sabbatical, really, it's not a religious thing. It's really a spiritual thing to renew yourself, to set yourself aside, apart from what the everyday hustle and bustle might be, whatever it is you're doing, to the extent of which you feel that burnout. Anyone can really can incorporate this and take on, this kind of.
Professors do it all the time.
Yeah, like you need to sometimes take a step back, a step away, because stated even another way, just to kind of show the principle in a word it differently, is that I've said on the show before, right? The best thing, loving me is the best thing I could ever do for you. And really the heart of that, or the principle, is this kind of renewed or stronger, better person that you experience when you go into that, go inward and you go do that sabbatical, right? Like, right. So it's not because when we see Vicky leave, all of the people looking forward to her in this purity and peace thing, right? It's not me doing this to you guys.
Right.
Rather than for you, for the sake of you.
Right.
Right? Because if I stay in the way, in the manner in which I am, somebody's gonna get their head bit off. Or I'm going to
ruin my reputation.
or again harm you. Like, right? This is to the behooving of us all. Right? Or anyone who has to do relationship with me from inwardly as either my spouse, children, or outwardly to the extent of my, whether it's members of my church, coworkers at the office, right? This is going to benefit everyone. Do we think that the pastor is doing that? How he modeled it for you? Yeah. Do you think he did that for the sake of, because I'm sick and tired of y'all, I don't want to deal with you guys. Like, no, I'm sure he loves what he does.
Absolutely.
Right? He loves the people of God, but he understands it's even behooving to what I hope to be able to be for you all.
Right.
For me to
And I saw him come back better. You know, you see when you see that, you're like, man, I need that. I need that better. I need that better version of myself. And I to share a little bit more and be transparent, I lost my brother to COVID in August 2021. And I say my brother, but really he was my primo hermano, which is it sounds kind of weird, but it's two sisters married two brothers. So my mom's sister married my father's brother. It's like two set of twins marrying each other. So my parents had 3 children, and then my aunt and my uncle got married to each other, and they had one child, and he's like my brother. We grew up very close. We were 6 years apart, but he got COVID and it was complicated, and he passed away in August 2021, and that was the first time someone that close to me passed. Then his mom got face cancer right after his passing, so she had to go through a really intense surgery for that. My mom got breast cancer and had surgery so it was like one right after the other. Jesus. And I did a preaching on this as well about when your soul is weary, right? And I was saying I was feeling so weary. It's like one hit after the other. With
all these hits on, you were still doing the ministry, like.
Oh yeah.
Full throttle.
And preaching God. Doing women, and I was the leader at Citywide Church for the women's and men's ministry as well. So I'm doing my personal ministry, women's and men's ministry. It's a lot, doing giving talks in your personal life,
in
my personal life,
you're getting boxed up.
I'm getting boxed up, and then I get shifted and pivoted into corporate, which is a totally different world, totally different jargon, totally different culture. And I'm like, okay, I need to pivot and really step up here, and realizing that I can't do all things for all people. I have to pull away from this area, and also realizing that, I need to take care of my mental health and go see a therapist and because Purity and Peace is very much like group therapy. And I'm giving like a lot of advice, right? And I'm feeling convicted because I'm like, no, forgive that person. And then I'm like, wait a second, heart check. Like, in this season, there's all this resentment stored up in me, or there's this or that. Hey, we take our cars to get oil changes, a tune up, all this stuff. Yep. We need to tune ourselves up. And so I like the way this podcast has kind of pivoted into this theme of just really going within. And again, whether you're a Christian, whether you're Muslim, whatever background you're from, you're in corporate, know that these past 2 years have been we've taken some serious hits in some way. And it is okay for you to recalibrate, to pull back from certain things that maybe once were life-giving, and now they're not anymore. And not being concerned about, well, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? But more concerned about, let me better myself and take care of me, so that when it's time for me to do it again, I'm a better version of myself. And really being open to change, because maybe Purity and Peace or Pure Love and Health Ministries isn't going to look the same in 2024 when we relaunch, right? Really, Viva La Beauty is really focused on women as well. Like, my heart is for women, especially millennial women and Gen X. That's really, and women of color. So that's really where my heart is. And so in Viva La Beauty too, I really want to help women, and it kind of like comes together as we have these women coming to the salons that I plan to open. It becomes a ministry and a place where we can also bring Purity and Peace in.
That's awesome.
To minister to women. And when you get healed on the inside,
that's fire.
You want to beautify. I find when these women go through Purity and Peace, they're at the gym. They're getting haircuts and their eyebrows done and all of that. And I want to create this 360 space where they can beautify from the inside out. And a safe space, and a space that's godly and right from the inside out. And so they're going through this Bible study and they're like, wow, I feel beautiful. I'm in my Esther preparation, season. And it's like, oh, come to Viva La Beauty.
Because too often, like, you have people, a society and culture, especially the age of Instagram and things like that, where it's built on the opposite, where people want to focus on the outside.
Right.
And their inside is a complete mess. You know what I mean? Right. And I was, it reminds me of, before my wife's father passed 3 years ago, I remember he was at home. He was like in and out of the hospital for a while. And one of the days or, times where he was back home from the hospital, he was, bedridden. And I remember going to the house to pray for him. And specifically to pray over his leg. He had like not been able to, walk anymore. So this was like early on when he like had just became bedridden. Because he couldn't stand and walk on his own. And like I think I want to say, like you could see like his leg was like in bad shape, visibly, and so, it was actually during the time where I was doing the school of ministry though at Cornerstone, and we were learning some really awesome things
about. We were in it together. I remember that.
Yeah, we were learning some really awesome things about healing, but specifically when it comes to like praying for people, checking with them to see what they are believing God for, rather than like kind of like
I'm gonna believe
imposing,
for you.
What we want God to do for them, right? Really like seeing
where their faith is at.
Yeah, like right. Talking to them. So and I actually was coming from that one of those classes that night, awesome. This particular night.
Yeah.
And it'll always stick with me what he said. When I went to pray for him, I first asked him that question. I said, what do you want me to pray for, Poppy? We call him Poppy. And he said, I want God to heal me on the inside first. This dude's bedridden. Bedridden. Deep. And he had at least the wherewithal to know
that if my heart is not right.
If everything else is failing, let me at least get this inside right before he passed. Wow. Shortly after that, man. And I was just like, that's where we all have to be. The focus, like, you know what I mean? Like I even mentioned on the show before other times where like, we see on the news and media all the time with celebrities who committing suicide and taking their lives recently in the media, the beloved Twitch, the dancer. I tell people working in mental health myself with youth for years, being an ex-cop, seeing people in their worst in that space. Like I tell people, when you hear or see someone who's committed suicide, 99% of the time, I am sure that there was a spiritual suicide that happened way before that. They were facing death on the inside way before you see that thing manifest outside.
In mind, right? Like just
way before. And are toiling and dealing with that thing for weeks, months, years.
The thing about that is this is why it could stay so hidden. Because we could see symptoms on the outside. And sometimes we do produce symptoms when we're depressed, right? You can see them. People are isolating and things like that. Margaret Rutherford, I actually listened to her podcast. She's a psychologist. And she founded this phrase called perfectly hidden depression. Perfectly hidden depression. And when you say that on the inside, right, it's like we can perform. A lot of us are anxiety driven, burnt out, tired. And we're like, I would have never guessed it, right? We're seeing people, Robin Williams, these people would have never guessed it.
Would have never
guessed it. Wait, this guy just put up a video dancing with his wife.
Away.
Right.
And I was like, wow.
And so she has this concept. She even has, if you go and find her, she even has a test that you can take for perfectly hidden depression that is like spot on.
Oh, wow.
For those who feel that,
I gotta look that up.
Yeah, perfectly hidden depression. I think it's called Self-Work is her podcast. And I was been listening to her, and it's just so incredible what she's founded in her research. But it's so easy to hide it because it's not like poison ivy, right? Where you can see the symptoms, right? And sometimes it's
you got
not
those
even,
depression bubbles, that rash breaking out on you.
It's like, wait, this person was the life of the party, and they just like hung out with us last night.
That's so
I had a student.
oh my God.
I had a student when I worked at Sacred Heart University that happened to, and he was very popular and everything, and I was like guilty. I was like, why didn't I see it? Why didn't I see it? Man. What did I miss? I'm too, into myself. I didn't see it. But a lot of times there's
perfectly hidden,
and we don't see it.
And I think a good defense, to that, at least a small measure of defense, could really just be our mindset, how we carry ourselves. Like, sometimes we can become arrogant to think that it can never happen to us, right? So we kind of carry ourselves, we navigate the world haphazardly, like, carelessly to some degree when it comes to creating, how you mentioned earlier, even healthy boundaries. Right. Like we act carelessly because we're just like, like that'll never be me. Like I'm not right. And you don't realize like you can legit wake up one day and just like that, all of those layers, all of those things have very craftily snuck up on you over time.
That's how the enemy works.
That's how so subtle. And it's like, how did I get here? And if I think you can enter each day or just life, carry a mindset through life, just knowing like no one's above it. Like it can be you if you're not careful. Granted, each of us might have our own capacity and degrees of which, we can tolerate, right? But it can be you.
In women, we see it a lot in the postpartum. And it's not talked about a lot. Where we can't control that, right? Your hormones are all over the place, and you see that in the postpartum depression that, a lot of, it's hard to talk about because it comes with, and this is like Brene Brown's expertise, but it's shame.
Yeah. Oh man.
It's like, I'm ashamed. I feel so much shame to admit what I'm really feeling right now.
Yeah.
And who am I going to let down?
You're right.
When I admit this.
Shame. Embarrassment.
It's that shame of, and then, not wanting to be
especially
vulnerable.
for our men, like.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And again, like when you're a celebrity on that celebrity level and you're making all this money, or let's just say you're highly successful, right? In that space, it's like, I don't have a reason.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think of that.
Like, why am I depressed?
Feel even more shame and embarrassment, right?
I literally have all the money that I need. I'm supported, all these things. But we don't realize that fulfillment and what truly fulfills the soul, right, is beyond the money. It's beyond the relationships and the marriage. It's that, we're Christian, right? We believe that with God in our lives, filling those voids. And it's also working through those voids and being honest about them and having that safe space and the godly people around us. And even with all of that, people have taken their lives, right? Even with God and even with all of that, people have taken their lives. I think a lot of it has to do with the shame that we carry. Yeah, and definitely. The expectations maybe that are placed on.
Who am I going to let down? Yeah. Wow. No, that's powerful. Man, we got to get you back on the show, Vicky, for sure. Yeah. Maybe could we convince you and the hubby? Is the hubby?
DJ will be here in 2 seconds.
Really?
He's down. He's a better pot. The thing is so funny is that my husband hasn't been unleashed to the world yet. Really,
he hasn't been unleashed to the world. That sounds so scary. What?
Oh my God! It's because I feel like he's he kind of plays this in the background
Yes.
mode.
Yeah. He
But-
does have that spirit about him.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna let
Yeah.
kind of go walk in the limelight, and I'm cool.
I'm
cool right here.
Yeah.
But we did a podcast series called the Pure Love Podcast. It's only 6 episodes, and for Pure Love and Health Ministries. And I let him. I was like, you know what? You're gonna lead this. And he's like, what? I was like, you're gonna lead the discussion on this. And let me tell you, that brother. Everyone, when I would be like, okay, what did you like about the podcast, friends? I liked when DJ said, DJ's wisdom. And I'm just like, all right, like, look at my husband. And then
so does he have plans of being unleashed in 2023?
Maybe.
Maybe
that's what it is, right? Maybe it's like I'm pulling back and I'm like,
maybe
you go.
I don't know.
But, yeah,
maybe it'll lend itself an opportunity.
Hey, you know what? I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. So yeah, maybe he'll come through. We'll have him. He's really wise, so he has a lot of nuggets to share with us.
I bet.
Sure. And so yeah, both of us will come back.
How long have you guys been married, by the way?
7 years.
Awesome.
In August.
Nice.
And we've been together for 10 years.
Awesome. So at the end of our show, if you heard the other episodes, right, we have to we discuss our 3 F's: faith, family, and finance. What are you learning in this season in those 3 areas? And then you got to leave the people with something edifying for the soul to take away. All right. So we'll run through them. Don't want to have you miss date night either.
Yep.
All right. So in the area of faith, what are you learning this season?
Let go and let God.
Bars. In the area of family.
Put my husband first. After God.
I like that. Could you expound?
So I think that
because I got the group of listeners going, no, girl, you put yourself first.
Right.
What are you talking about?
So really, I mean, I am very blessed. My husband is a super humble dude.
Yeah.
And he's super supportive. But I realized that, and I'm like super alpha female, right? So I have to understand that strength about me, and and I think he loves that about me.
Yeah.
But I've also realized that I've overstepped some boundaries in our relationship in terms of like control and decision making, and my husband like is just going with the flow here, and I felt very convicted to really change the way I talk to him in terms of when he's like, let's do it this way. I'm like, all right, let's do it that way. And letting him lead and putting him first in terms of letting him lead. In the home and different decisions, because I'm always going to have, I'm an opinionated person. I'm always going to have like, I think we should do it this way, right? And I've really been learning this season in terms of family is my husband's super wise. He's super capable, right? And he's really leading the leader. God's honoring him as the leader of my family. Let him lead.
I love that.
Let him lead. Like,
I love it.
I'm just gonna like, oh, you want to do it that way? Let's do it that way. Cool. Like, let's see what that looks like.
You want to take me out to dinner after the podcast? Cool.
You know
I'm
what?
cool.
Got me reservations to Barcelona.
It ain't always serious, you know.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's celebratory.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So just putting him first in all the things of family and what we're doing in our next steps in our life. And I think that's another reason why I've taken a step back this season too, is really to put him first, and maybe even like encourage him, like, you go do given talks, you go shine, you go on the podcast, and encouraging him in that way, because he's been a huge,
you go on the Free Lunch podcast,
right?
Yeah,
right. So yeah, letting my husband lead and doing it his way and being okay with that.
I love it.
Yeah.
And does he introduce himself like that to you, DJ?
Yeah, DJ.
That's how he introduces himself, right?
Dominic Garcia, Dominic Julian, DJ. That's where it comes from.
So, because you know, once his Boo Things episode comes out, he's gonna definitely listen into this episode. If he doesn't listen to any other Free Lunch episode, he's gonna listen to this one. So, since I know you're listening, DJ, listen. If at the time this release, this is about 6 weeks out.
Okay.
This episode. If by the time you hear this episode, if I have not already reached out to you, if you have not made your way onto the podcast, I need you to reach out to me. Hit me up. I would love to have you on the show. All right.
Yes,
That's my
DJ,
piece.
you need to be on the show.
In the area of finance, that's the last one. Usually, because of the majority of our listener base or audience and a lot of the guests, they are in the kind of entrepreneur space.
Yeah.
It's usually from like that perspective.
Okay.
Like find out what they're learning in finances as far as that. But you could approach it from whatever lens you want.
What do you from where we're at right now? So we just bought our first home, and we are working on things. It's a fixer-upper.
Mm-hmm.
One project at a time. And this can apply to entrepreneurs as well, because we're got the spirit of wanting to do it all, do the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
But be really smart with your finances and prioritize, make a list, prioritize what is most important to get done, get that budget out there. And I do this actually in my role at my job as well, just like that project management and annual planning, and seeing, okay, what are the 2023, projects that you want to work on, and in what order should you be working on them, and do what you can afford. Live within your means, because taking out loans and doing all these crazy things, you may not be able to do that. Live with the way things are. Be content. I think it comes with contentment. Be content with the way things are right now. If that means that you have to have lawn chairs instead of that $3,000 couch.
Yeah.
In your living room or in your workspace or workplace, like, make it work,
Absolutely.
And that comes with sacrificing the aesthetics sometimes that you want it to be, and going with what you have, and really prioritizing. I think it's really important for us to put it down on paper, put a price tag next to it, and kind of prioritize it by what you can afford, and plan well. Plan well. That. Always have that emergency fund too to the side, like a few thousand put to the side, because emergencies are always going to happen. The toilet's always going to.
And you can imagine with like all the different varied guests from all different backgrounds that like come onto the show and share at the end of the show, those areas, those things they're learning. Is that people usually end up hearing some similar things in the area of finance.
Right.
Yeah, right. And so my goal with that is hopefully that people hear those nuggets that are the same across all different
power
guests.
and repetition. There's
exactly,
power in repetition.
and so
I haven't heard all the guests. So if I'm saying the same thing that everyone else
that's
is
kind
saying,
of the idea, guys. So it's like, it's not that I expect every time I ask another guest that they hear something totally unique. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's just that hopefully people hear some similar things in the area of faith across different platforms. The author who came on the show said this about faith. The corporate person, the doctor, so they can see that, hey, there's some similarities here. Hey, I might.
And there's a word for the season, and sometimes it's going to be the same.
Exactly,
like it's the same spirit.
Exactly.
So it's like there's a word for the season, and so in this season, definitely prioritize in those finances.
So, lastly, out of all of what we talked about on the show, or something that might just pop up in your head now, what's the free food for the soul that you want to leave the people with? What are we going to leave them with today?
That's a good one. There is a time and season for everything under the sun. And if this is not your winning season, it is okay. Not every season is a mountaintop season. There are a lot of lessons to be learned in the valley. And I found that the valley has helped me appreciate the mountaintop that much more. We can't live on the mountaintop. We can't put our house on the mountaintop. We need to live in a more secure place, right?
That's fire.
It's like, man.
That is an entire episode alone. We cannot live on the mountaintop. We must make the space in the valley.
Yeah.
Yo, the mountaintop is too narrow of a space.
It's cold up there.
Literally not even
snow.
Designed to be a plateau, a place where you can set up shop.
Nice view, though.
Excellent view.
Really good feeling when you make it up there. Like, I'm rooting for you.
But it's not sustainable there. That's so fire.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have DJ come on for that episode.
Listen, he'll break it down.
I'm gonna have him break it down for us.
He will break it down. He will.
Thank you so much,
You're
Victoria,
so
for
welcome.
coming.
Thank you for having me. And if you want to
So
follow
pumped.
on social media, feel free to follow.
You definitely better drop everywhere they can follow you. Where they can follow you. She's gonna be on a bit of sabbatical. You know, we don't know really what that's gonna look like completely, but she's got some awesome things on the horizon that we can look forward to.
Absolutely.
So where can they find you on social media or online, website, whatever?
So social media, you can find Viva La Beauty at Viva La Curls on Instagram and TikTok. I'm on Viva La Curls, and that's where I'm doing a lot of my beauty marketing and tips and tricks. And I'm getting my microblading license. So follow me as I get that journey all set. And Pure Love and Health will be on sabbatical, but you're always welcome to go and view the content that's there already. And that is at Pure Love and Health on Instagram. And you can find us on a Facebook page at Purity Plus Peace. So it's Purity Plus for the and peace.
And you said there's a book? Is that available online?
So there is
On
a
Amazon,
workbook.
or?
There is a workbook that we are selling at purityandpeace.com. You can download the PDF version of the Bible study right there. Feel free to go underneath the women's ministry section, and you can look for the Purity and Peace workbook.
Awesome.
And it's available for download on PDF.
And that's the cool thing about digital products is even when you take a sabbatical, it's still there.
It's still there, and you can do it with your friends and family. So hopefully that blesses you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was an excellent episode.
Thank you so much.
That's why the enemy was trying to...
Right. It took me forever. I was like, what is going on?
But you made it.
Resistance.
Thank you so much. Hey, make sure you guys go follow our guests. We'll have a link in the description of this episode so you guys can find her. It's free lunch, free food for your soul, y'all. Peace.